yes, imagine if you will, a world made of goodwill, made of good hearts, made of good love, where there is no opposition, no polarity. You see, you take a look at it, it looks like the Mother Earth we know now. But as we tune in, we don't see any huge cities anywhere. Nothing on the coast, nothing up in the tall mountains, nothing on the grand prairies. Yet we come in a little closer, and what does our view tell us then? Oh my goodness, the people are all living in these tiny little mountains the earth prepares for them. Yeah, from the catalyzation of the creative heart comes forward the homes we always dreamed of, the homes we remember, whether they're way down low there by the show, or way up high there in the mountain high sky, or anywhere in between. Each person, each individual, a cherished soul, if ever there was one, brought forward to live in the most idyllic of conditions. It's kind of like how nature provides for the fairies, you know. Little fairies about anywhere from, 3 inches tall on up to about 18 inches tall, depending on, and that's just a vision, a view, a way of seeing, a perspective. You see, but if you've known fairies like, I even have gotten to know a little bit of my own fairy side already. First time I recall meeting them was out there in Oklahoma. I was living there for a little while, and by golly, one morning, early, like 3-4 o'clock in the morning, I feel this tiny pressure on my chest, like little footsteps walking around on my chest. And I'm going, what? And I kind of wake up a little bit foggy, but instantly clear. You know how that goes, dear? When you're really seeing something, all of a sudden you come out of the clouds, and wham, you're right there with it. And there was this little guy about 18 inches tall. If I ever saw a living replication of myself, this was it. He's even wearing spinders like I do, man, and had on this plaid logger's shirt, kind of a yellowish tinge, maybe a goldish tinge. And he was talking to he had white beard just like me, white hair, same way you see, and little old fairy hat, looked like a cowboy hat, but not quite, And he's talking to some feminine voice over there in my closet across the room diagonally from us there, where I was laying on the bed, and he was standing on my chest. And then he realized I was seeing him. After him and that little lady over there in the closet, I think she was looking for something over there in our closet. They're mischief makers sometimes, but when he realized I was seeing him and hearing him, he goes, wow, and just evaporates into the other dimensions, Well, people, we have that side of ourselves. That's an aspect of ourselves. The fairies represent that, and they have held that innocent mischievousness for us as the fairy people. You see, every form of life here performs a grand role in the scheme of life. And when we knew that humanity was going to become broken and scattered and densified so deeply that we might not ever get out of the darkness of that depression we were creating there, but we knew it was a worthy effort just the same, because we had our cousins, our brothers and sisters in reality, that had gone the darker way, and we needed to bring them back, eh? So we created this sweet little trap. We made a new earth that didn't look like that one we've been seeing. But that's the one we're being now, you see. There is transitions in place everywhere. Because what we fell down into and all the muck and pain to go with it, we're rising up out of, just as automatically as we fell into it. De-evolve to re-evolve. You see, that's the formula. And as we re-evolve, guess what? We bring all those dishonorable energies with us because they're no longer dishonorable. They finally realized the love. We finally outlasted them. We showed them how much of the torment and grief we could take. We took our broken and scattered pieces and laid them out throughout creation and said, we'll gather them together later, man. We're going to live in a dumbed-down state. We're going to be hanging around where war is our fate. So often, man. You know, I never could dig, in this lifetime here, I never could dig the cycles of war. I couldn't fathom when they started telling me about World War II. Like many of you, I was born a little bit after that, you know. So it was my cousins and my uncles and people like that that went and fought in that war. But millions and millions and millions of people died. It was one of the most savage wars this earth has ever known. And it was a war on the civilian populations of the disagreeable countries that we were warring with. You know, it's funny how there was this old Marine one time I used to haul around as a little favor to him every now and then. And he and I were talking, this was 20 years ago or something, maybe a little less than that, because it was 16 years ago. We were driving around talking about how America's really never known the war on our shore. Well, we have. We fought the Mexicans. We fought the Canadians. We fought the British. We've known a lot, but not in recent times until what? The day after that, or maybe 2 days after that little conversation of ours, whammo, on comes 911. And you know, I saw it on television. It's like everybody else did. I know where I was when it first hit. I was getting a ticket from one of Boulder Police's finest for making a right turn out of the right-hand lane. How about that? I think I could get that one dismissed, huh? But anyway, all of a sudden the ticket and the cop went away. Goodbye, Charlie. And what's going on? You know, all the cops are panicked, you know. So I headed back to my little home that I had then, a little hovel out there in the Grand Prairies, the high Grand Prairies just outside of Boulder. Clicked on that TV, and there's those towers getting run into by a big old airplane or two, and then all of a sudden they fall down. I looked at that, and I said to myself, that ain't sensible. That's planned demolition. An airplane flying into a building, I don't care how big it is not going to do that. These are structurally reinforced to take exactly that. They knew that was a hazard, that the possibility of an airplane having some mechanical trouble, flying low, maybe in the fog and couldn't find its way out, don't you know. They knew of those possibilities. So they designed and engineered these buildings there in New York City to withstand that kind of hit. For example, back in about 1938, before the big war, there was a 4-engine prop plane, a big old bomber of one sort or another, ran right into the Empire State Building, man. They're about the upper third of it, you know. Well, it made a hell of a fire, and it wasted away, you know, a good part of a few floors of the building and so forth. But the building remained structurally sound. There was no huge fire that took it down. And guess what? That 4-engine plane probably had as much kerosene on board as those jet planes do. Maybe not quite, but it was still an equivalent hit. And not, I mean, you know, of course lives were lost, and we grieve for that, but nothing really came of it. They repaired the building, and there it still stands to this day. So I knew, looking at that 911 stuff, that there was something really, really wrong with what they were saying. An airplane doesn't fly into a building and the building fall down because of it. It just doesn't work that way. And if the building were to fall down, it's going to twist and sway and topple over on a bunch of other buildings, you know, wouldn't you say? I mean, you know, it's going to do a little dance on its way down. The girders and beams are not going to turn into dust. Yet they did. That thing just evaporated. There was hardly a rubble pile at the bottom of it, you know. Wow. Well, this is stuff we found out later, but just looking at it right then, I knew that this was not right. Something was rotten in Denmark, and we better be marking it up and finding out what it is. But, you know, you just go on from there, and now, you know, people with my kind of opinions, you know, view of what happened there have been kind of vindicated. Because, you know, there's over 300 professional architects and building engineers and so forth have come out and said, no, this scenario could not have gone this way. This building would not collapse. It was structurally sound and could take the hit, etc. And now you've got, you know, others, you know, Judy Wood, for example. She's done real investigation and sees there's a scalar weapon involved. that some of this high technology that somebody somewhere has been hiding in the background from us was used in that instance. And now probably up there in California in those fires, from the looks of things, I'd say that was warfare. Outright open warfare on the people of California. Just because of the way the fires hit all at once and the way the houses melted down. Now, I don't know if you guys been around burning houses, but I certainly have got burned out once myself, though I wasn't there when it happened. But I see the aftermath. And there ain't no steel beams melted. You know, glass doesn't melt. You know, your tub, your toilets, they're still there. I mean, yet in these fires, none of that exists. You know, stone walls were reduced to piles of rubble. Dust. You know, now that's a really hot fire. There's something really wrong in Denmark again. Not to mention what's going on there in Las Vegas first part of October, right? You see, they're getting clumsy. They're getting reckless because they feel all too confident in themselves, like they're winning, when in fact they are us. And we can't allow this kind of winning to go on, because that's nobody winning anything. That's everybody, you know, skipping the transition and going straight into hell instead of paradise. You see? And that ain't nice. And that ain't what we're here to do, man. What we're here to do is see it otherwise. So what I encourage you to do, pay attention to what goes on here. The Las Vegas thing, that is the place where it's going to break. You know, and then the California thing, I think, you know, we'll see. But then the California thing, then the 911, and you know, maybe the JFK Papers getting released if they'll ever really do it. You know, talk is cheap. But if they ever do release those JFK Papers, and there won't be any bones about it, and this man we allowed to be president after he killed someone who was president. I mean, that's what the evidence indicates. My opinion now, again, I'm not saying this is exactly how it is. We'll see the paperwork if they ever allow it to truthfully be released. You know, I think old Trumpy Bumpy is, ornery enough character to maybe get away with it. And then again, maybe he's just a showpiece. You know, just a little puppet. And they're just teasing us. But guess what? The truth will be known because of this Las Vegas thing. The JFK thing will be resolved too. They really screwed up on this Las Vegas thing. They being those who work in the shadowy background. And see, what we're doing here today is bringing ourselves back together in a way that doesn't allow ourselves to be included in such events, in such moments, you see. In other words, we kind of take the sting out of them right away by realizing our interconnectedness with everything and everyone, especially inside of ourselves. That's the Spring Quick Flow here on the Hazy Radio Network, and that's the new earth we're coming to know as well, you see. You look at that new earth, that imagined earth, that Connie Talbot and John Lennon probably worked together on in the spirit realm, wouldn't you say? I would say. And there they are, man, natural homes, built by nature herself, from the heart, the loving heart of the universe that provides shelter for all of her kin, all of it. From the tiniest little mouse to the biggest spider in the house to the house itself for human beings. You see, we don't have to live in a fixed place and stay there forever. Or, you know, move around trying to make money selling our house and getting a better one because we made some money on the last one and so forth. Those old games don't work anymore anyway, do they? Or very rarely, most of the time, the outcome is you're losing these days. You know, but there was a time when people could gain on real estate. But you see, you can't own the land. The land owns us. The sky, too, and the earth. We're made of the earth and sky. And the oceans as well, of course. 98% ocean, man. But 98% ethereal, too, to go right along with that ocean. That's what gives the dense water the lightness of life. And love is that ability to be light about it. So as we back up a little more, we see our old world as kind of a cosmic joke. You know, yes, it was hell to live in. Yes, people suffered, myself included, you too, everybody. has suffered greatly here. We designed our own suffering, by the way. So never bitch at the universe for what's coming your way, because some way or another you agreed to it along the way. Else it wouldn't be happening, okay? Just as simple as that. But the whole idea is to bring us up out of that. That view that can be pain. That view that can be killed. That perspective that sees life has a beginning and an end. A time. A time frame, see? This is what all this dastardliness going on in the background is encouraging us to see. The higher, more etheric side of life. Because that's where the true power is. I call it the heart. And it's right there in the center of every living soul love that bees, whether it's Dick Cheney or Donald Rump or anybody else in this reality. Everybody, she's going down and going down hard. I do think she'll do some jail time. And if she does, you know DC is done. The CIA is done. Probably with the release of the JFK Papers, if they ever truthfully are released. You know they're trying to hold back and not let anybody know that our own government killed our president. But it wasn't our own government. As I've told you before, back around 1952 or so, there was a surrender on the part of the Americans, even right after the war, but especially around 52. See, we've been ruled over by the Nazis we were fighting in Germany and Japan and so forth in World War II. We're really our own people. They created the conflict. They get off on savage death and all that kind of stuff. War, in other words. They get off on that. At least that's been the view that they've held, you know. A lot of these things are human sacrifices. I mean, you got to look at the bigger picture, but you don't want to get swept up in it. Because the dark side has ruled here for a long time, secretly and quietly in the background. But little by little, decency's gone away. In these last 100 years or so, wouldn't you say? And now we've got a whole frickin' system that totally lacks integrity. That everybody found out they did have a price, and most of them sold out for it, too. Some held back, but, you know, I don't know what I'd do. Somebody was sitting there wagging $20 million in my face. I'd probably tell them, well, could you wipe my butt, man? I just took it. I don't know if I got it all. You know? Maybe. Well, that's me. I just don't have a whole lot of respect for the money or the system that it represents, and I never have, and I probably never will. You know, it's not that I think money is necessarily evil, but I don't see it as a necessity whatsoever. Do you? Really? Do you really think, you know, that all this selling out we've done for the sake of a little money is really worth it? Do you realize your creative power? Can you see this new world coming? That doesn't need governments and contractors and, you know, militaries to keep things right. Where everybody is united and tribes of many different colors gather in the same little villages all across this earth. So it's like this earth is one huge city, yet you'd never know it because it looks natural as nature herself. When you let nature provide, when you let the heart of the universe provide, you don't build things that are contrary to the reality around you. These stupid-ass, square-cornered little boxes we live in. I'm glad I live in a place with a few. It's still got straight lines and angles and stuff. There ain't no 90-degree angles in here, man. You know, I like to live in a round home, a dome home. If I had to build it myself here in this reality, I think that's the most ideal home here in the 3D. But once this third density starts to give way to the heart, which it's doing already today because it's Free Day Friday, man. And what does that mean? A day of freedom. So let's put good energy toward those guys back in D.C. Release all the papers. For once in your life, trust the people with the truth and let's see what happens and where it goes from there. Maybe when folks realize how involved we all are in the moments that happen here, that we feel though so distant from, maybe when we realize that everyone had a part in that, then you can let go of the evil side of things and not see it as so evil anymore, but just a schemer and a scammer that did what it was programmed to do. And we did what we were programmed to do, to suffer it through and bring it back to its own heartfelt reality. Because that's what we're here to do. And maybe it's just a grand game we designed for ourselves way back in what we call the beginning. There in that Spring Creek moment. Maybe it is. That's a damn fine game. And we've become pretty adept players in that game now, haven't we? I know you're sitting there feeling all dark and depressed and moody because you don't know which way to go and winter's coming. Here comes the snow, etc. But baby, you got it all. Just slow down in your mind, slow down a little bit there in your body and soul, and let yourself see what's in the flow for you. Because if you've lost it all, you've got everything. You're ready to come back in a whole new place. You may even be able to create that little miracle I'm talking about right now. You might be able to go out there and just how some of us have learned to communicate with the weather and so forth. Maybe we can communicate with Mother Nature herself and get her to provide a little adequate shelter for ourselves wherever we happen to be. Maybe it'll be just a little twist in the root off the trunk of a tree that kind of arches itself up. And that puts a little doorway on the front so you don't have to put up with the weather coming through, see? And there inside is the most comfy place you could ever be. Living in not a dirty reality, but a sparkly, shining one. So you don't need interior lights when you are the light. You don't need interior love when you are the interior love. You see, that's what we're made of. All of us. From the most wicked to the most deceitful to the cleverest of the jolly giants of love. Everything in between. And we are quite a vast landscape of human expression. When you start to meet your cousins and uncles and aunts and so forth from out there in the universe that live in other places besides the place where we live, well, then you'll realize how grand this family is and how diverse and varied it can be, but how so tied into the synchronicity of creation. That's our true place. That's our vision. And it supersedes all the disharmony here, takes the sting right out of it, and puts it to bed, and says, okay, when you wake up, kid, you'll no longer be dead. You'll be alive and living forevermore. So even those that have played these dastardly roles and manipulated and fooled the public a gazillion times have done nothing but fool themselves. And once they get that little slumber on, and then their heart comes strong, you'll see the most dastardly of them turning into some of the most beneficial human beings we could ever be. Literally, angels rising out of some of the darkest spaces in hell. Now, you got to realize, I know I talked about this a wee bit, but you got to realize that these folks that are in positions of dark leadership, those that operate from the background and the foreground, have been ritually abused as children, as tiny children, and have been conditioned through cruel and heartless means to become what they are now. And for the most part, that shit remains buried in them. They don't even know it's there. They don't know they have a presence. They think they are the presence, and the presence is empty and is not full and cannot get enough. So it wants destruction and creation and destruction and creation and more destruction, more. And why does it do that? Because it feels empty. It feels robbed of its life. It feels robbed of feeling. It doesn't know how to love. It got lost in the coldness of the darkness, whatever that was. But see, because everything is made of light, there is no darkness. Not in space, not inside of us either. Not in anything. There is shading and contrast indeed. And that's the darkness function, to give depth and perception, contrast to this colorful life we're living. This rock and roll world we're given, with all of its ugly mysteries to unravel, babies. But there's only one, and that's the mystery of your own heart. Everything else is based on that. You want to see the world not come apart? You want to see the Nazi imperialists lose for once and forever? Well, I won't see anybody lose. I want to see everybody gain, but I certainly will not tolerate an unloving world. Will you? I didn't think so. Well, this is where we go with the flow now. This is how we change. This is how we bring on the new world. where we all get to live in such divine harmony with one another and the Mother Earth. We'll be happy just like the fairies are. You know what I mean? They've held that energy of happiness for us all along. And they're ready to spread it and share it far and wide. And realize those fairies, yes, just like me, there's a replication of you there too. Because they're kind of like the counterculture here. The invisible counterculture. The naughty ones didn't even see them. But that's why we were able to contain and control their activities and keeping them from blowing the whole world apart already. I mean, they started doing that back in the 50s. They wanted to do that. Clear back there, what is that, 60, 70 years ago now is when all this started. In other words, World War II never really ended. There was a surrender, a truce, and all that good stuff. But the power of that war kept on going. It just moved underground for a while. And now that war has become a war upon all people on this earth. And how do we stop that? Surrender? Well, surrender to your heart. Because it knows better. It knows that people cannot behave this way. That evil, as we see it, does not exist. The darkness is a fiction. A fable that a lot of souls got caught up in. All of us, one way or another. And some of us, a lifetime after lifetime to figure this stuff out. Get this nuance here, get that nuance there, and go forward with it, Some take on real heavy burdens, but burdens here are not burdens, they're blessings. So, you've taken on a load of that darkness, like some of the leadership has. Well, darlings, understand. You're there to bring it around, man. To not live in that energy, to see through the silliness, the illusion of it. To know that we cannot be polarized and made to push-pull and compete with one another. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I was a kid, how these, it was a Mormon population I was living in, and they revered competition. They said that's what gives humanity its edge. It's all this competition, trying to outdo one another. Babies, they were promoting the most selfish, empty aspects of life there could be. And I knew it as a tiny child. I couldn't say it to them, but I sure tried. They just didn't listen too much. They thought I was full of shit too. Well, maybe I was, You got to get here somehow, man. You got to go through a lot. And it's okay. So they burdened me with one of their blessings like that. And guess what? It's been a blessing right to this day. I don't carry any burdens. Only blessing. I might go through a lot of shit, but that's the way we designed it. It's the way we get to an end and a beginning. A new beginning, where the new earth shines through. And all these old cities and so forth, these crime spots, just dissolve away. And new residential housing comes into play, and you wake up in it as if you've lived there all of your life and didn't know any better, you see. Because a few folks were able to hang on to the reality of love in the 3D, the third density. That's Spring Creek. That's the beginning. That's our moment of truth, coming to you from this tiny sound booth, way up high in the Rocky Mountain sky. I think we should go on a picnic today, even though it's November almost. Well, it's still October, but almost November. I think we should go on a picnic today, don't you? Hurry on down. So, Stone Soul Picnic, I think all of our shows should party down. Let's set an example of how to bring this whole world around, okay? Spring Creek. From the beginning, the rockin'est little radio show that'll ever move your heart and soul. This is radio, and to know you can live. This is life itself, revealing itself to itself. Right here on the ever-clear and loving-hearted, sweet-hearted, hazy radio network. The place you turn to, dear, when you really want to get it clear, when you want to step out of that fog, okay?